I'm 36, an accountant, and for the last decade, I believed I had a steady life. I lived in Portland, Oregon, in a small but cozy apartment with my husband, Mark. We'd been married for 10 years. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing that ever felt unmanageable. I thought we were solid, safe. That morning, everything was about celebration. My younger brother, Dylan, was getting married to Victoria, a woman he had adored for years. The whole family had been buzzing for weeks. My parents were flying in. The venue was decorated. And I, as his big sister, was proud. I had helped plan the wedding, even paid part of the deposit to make things easier for him. I was slipping into my dress when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a message from my mom or the florist. Instead, it was from an unknown number. "Don't go to your brother's wedding. Check your husband's garage." Just that, no punctuation, no name, just cold, gray text. At first, I thought it was a prank, some scam, or maybe one of those wrong number messages. So the words clung to me. Not go to the wedding, check Mark's garage. My mind tried to dismiss it, but my body wouldn't. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked fine, hair curled, makeup done, dress pressed. But something was off. I couldn't shake the feeling. I called Mark. No answer. He had left early that morning, saying he had a last-minute client meeting before joining us at the venue. He kissed me goodbye like it was just another day. But now I wasn't so sure. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves. But the message replayed in my mind like a siren. Check the garage, over and over. The ceremony was still hours away. Mark wasn't responding. And I remembered something. He had made a spare key to the garage last year. Said he'd leave it in the keepsake box in our closet, just in case. Without thinking, I walked over, opened the lid, and there it was, a small silver key. Harmless, ordinary. But I already knew, somehow, that what it would unlock was anything but. I left the apartment without saying a word. My parents were busy in the kitchen, preparing pies and fussing over last-minute details. I didn't want to worry anyone. This was supposed to be a day of joy, and I still hoped somehow that I was overreacting. The garage Mark rented was only a few blocks away, part of an old industrial lot turned storage complex. I walked quickly, the cold Portland air biting against my skin. My thoughts were loud, too loud. When I arrived, rows of gray metal doors stood silent, indifferent. I found Mark's unit number 42. My fingers trembled as I slid the key into the lock. Click. The door creaked open. It was dark inside. The smell of oil and cold metal hung in the air. I used my phone's flashlight to scan the space. Mark's old Lincoln sat in the back, covered in dust. Boxes lined the shelves. Nothing unusual. I almost laughed. Relief began to spread through me until something in the far corner caught my eye. A large cardboard box, covered with a faded blanket. I stepped closer. My heart thudded. Slowly, I pulled the blanket away. Inside the box were women's items, things that didn't belong to me. A red leather purse. Nude high heels. A familiar perfume bottle. My blood ran cold. I picked up the purse. It was designer Victoria's favorite brand. I had gone shopping with her once. I knew that purse. I opened it. Inside was her wallet, a small makeup bag, and her keys. Then I saw them. Photographs. A whole stack. I pulled them out. Mark and Victoria on a beach, laughing, embracing, kissing, not just one or two. Dozens, different outfits, different days, but always the same message: intimacy, affection. A relationship. Not a one-time mistake. This had history. In one photo, she was lying on a beach towel, Mark leaning over to kiss her forehead. In another, they were sitting at a cafe, his hand on hers, eyes locked like lovers on vacation. I staggered back a step, the photos shaking in my grip. I wanted to vomit, to scream. But there was more. At the bottom of the box was a folder. Inside were printed messages, emails, handwritten notes, scraps of conversations. I didn't want to read them, but I had to. "I'm marrying Dylan for stability. You and I, this is real. Just wait. Once the wedding is over, we'll find a way. You're my true home." Another one. "Thank you for always waiting for me. She'll never know. He'll never know. Not yet." I stood in that garage for what felt like an eternity. Frozen, shattered. My marriage, my brother's future, it was all tangled in this cruel lie. My first instinct was to burn it all, call them out, go straight to the wedding and drag Victoria out in front of the guests. But then something inside me calmed. If I exploded now, I'd lose the one thing they didn't expect me to have control. No, I thought, not yet. I pulled out my phone. Slowly, carefully, I took photos of everything: the purse, the shoes, the perfume, the letters, the pictures. I documented it all. When I finished, I put everything back exactly as I found it. I wiped down the surfaces I'd touched, locked the door, slipped the key back into my coat pocket. As I walked away, one thing was clear. They had no idea what I now knew. But soon they would. I walked back to my car in silence, the sound of my own footsteps somehow louder than everything else around me. The sky was still bright, the world still turning, but for me, time had fractured. I sat behind the wheel, staring ahead, unsure what to do next. My hands were still trembling. My heart hadn't slowed down. The photographs burned in my purse like embers. I could hear Mark's voice in my head, soft and familiar. The man who kissed me that morning, who promised to meet me at the wedding, that man was a stranger now. But this wasn't just about me. It never had been. This was about Dylan. My little brother. The boy I used to walk to school. The one who made me laugh when everything else felt too heavy. He deserved better than a lifetime with someone who could betray him so completely. I knew I couldn't confront Victoria at the altar. Not in front of our parents, not with guests sipping champagne and string quartets playing in the background. So I did the only thing that felt right. I called him. It rang longer than I wanted it to. My pulse quickened with each ring. Then, "Hey Em, what's going on? You're not at the venue yet." His voice was light, cheerful. My throat tightened. "Dylan," I said, "carefully, I need to talk to you. Alone. Before the ceremony." "Is something wrong?" he asked, concern slowly replacing the ease in his tone. "I can't explain over the phone. Please, just trust me. Meet me at the back entrance of the venue. Half an hour." He hesitated. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "Okay," he said finally. "Half an hour." When the call ended, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I didn't know how he would take it. I didn't know if he'd believe me. But I knew he had to know the truth before he made the biggest mistake of his life. And I was going to be the one to tell him. I arrived at the venue just before our meeting time. Guests were beginning to settle in. Laughter floated through the air. Soft music played from the speakers. Everything looked picture perfect from the outside, just like Victoria had always wanted. But the truth was anything but beautiful. I parked near the service entrance and spotted Dylan pacing behind the building. He looked sharp in his tuxedo, but his brows were furrowed, and he kept checking his watch. When he saw me, he hurried over. "Em, what's going on? You're scaring me." I didn't speak right away. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. The one I had filled with photos, printouts of messages, and notes I had copied from the garage. "Read this," I said quietly, handing it to him. Dylan frowned and opened the envelope. The first photo he pulled out was of Mark and Victoria sitting at a beachside cafe, their hands entwined. His eyebrows knit together in confusion. He flipped to the next one, Victoria in a sundress, smiling at Mark as he held her waist. Then another kissing on the sand. I watched his expression change from puzzlement to disbelief to something hollow. When he reached the printed messages, his hands began to shake. "She's marrying Dylan for stability. You're my real life. One more lie, and it will all be ours." He looked up at me, eyes wide, voice cracking. "Is this real? Please tell me this isn't real." I swallowed hard. "I found it all this morning, in Mark's garage. I wish I didn't. But it's real." Dylan stared at the papers again. The silence between us was thick with shock. "I don't understand," he muttered. "Why would she do this? Why would he do this?" "I don't have those answers," I said, "but you can't marry her, Dylan, not like this. Not when the whole thing is a lie." He didn't say anything. He just looked down at the photos, his jaw clenched, breathing shallow. Finally, after a long moment, he nodded. "Okay," he said, his voice low. "Okay." And with that, he turned and walked back toward the main entrance. I followed behind, unsure of what he would do. I just knew he had made his decision. Inside, the venue buzzed with anticipation. Guests chatted. The officiant stood ready at the altar, and Victoria was standing beneath the arch, glowing in white. She spotted Dylan approaching and gave a soft smile. "Danny, there you are. Where were you?" Dylan stopped in the center of the aisle. His voice was calm but firm. "There won't be a wedding." The room fell silent. Victoria blinked. What? Is this a joke? I know everything, Dylan said. About you. About Mark. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Victoria's face twisted from confusion to panic. What are you talking about? That's not true. Someone's lying to you. It doesn't matter who told me, Dylan replied. I've seen the photos. I've read the messages. This marriage isn't happening. You're ruining everything, she hissed. How dare you do this to me in front of everyone? So no, he said. You ruined everything the moment you started planning a future with someone else while pretending to love me. Her voice rose. You think I loved Mark. You think I meant any of it. He was nothing. It was a mistake. Dylan's expression didn't change. You don't get to rewrite the story now. Just leave. She turned to me, eyes wild. It was you, wasn't it? You've always hated me. You couldn't stand seeing me marry into your family. I don't hate you, I said evenly. But I love my brother, and he deserves better than this. She stepped toward me, hand raised in fury. But Dylan caught her wrist midair. Don't, he said. Just go. The moment froze. Victoria stared at both of us, breath ragged, eyes darting around the room as if trying to find anyone who would take her side. No one moved. Finally, she yanked her arm away, turned, and stormed down the aisle, the train of her gown dragging behind her like a ghost of everything that was lost. The door slammed shut. Dylan stood there for a long moment, not speaking, not moving. Then he slowly sat down on the front pew, lowered his head into his hands, and exhaled. What now? He whispered. I sat beside him, put a hand on his shoulder. Now you breathe, I said, and then you start again. And for the first time in hours, Dylan nodded, not because he had the answers, but because he was finally free to look for them. The guests slowly trickled out of the venue, whispering behind hands, unsure whether to say goodbye or just disappear. My parents had no idea what to say. Mom cried. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. But Dylan stayed seated, staring at the floor, as if the whole world had dropped out from under his feet. I stayed with him until he asked for a few minutes alone. I stepped outside for air. That's when I saw him, Mark. He was standing near the parking lot, talking to a few guests. When he spotted me, his smile faltered. He walked toward me, eyes sharp, jaw tense. What's going on? He asked, his voice too casual to be innocent. Why did Dylan call off the wedding? I met his eyes. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of what I'd see there. Because he knows, I said quietly. He knows about you and Victoria. Mark froze. He didn't blink, his face paled. Then, slowly, he stepped back. You told him? He hissed. You ruined everything. No, I replied, calm but cold. You did that. The moment you betrayed your vows and your brother-in-law. You did this. You'll regret this, he snapped. You've destroyed our family. Our family? I shook my head. That stopped existing the day you started lying to me. He stared at me, seething, searching for something to say. But there was nothing left. Not for me, not for him, not for us. Mark turned and walked away, his fists clenched, his shoulders tight. I didn't follow. I didn't call after him. I let him go. Because I knew the truth, what we had was already gone. It had been gone long before that day. I had just refused to see it. That night, Mark didn't come home. The next morning, I found his key on the counter, his closet half empty. No note. No apology. And honestly, I didn't need one. The silence in our apartment felt different now. It used to feel like avoidance. Now it felt like space. Like air returning after you've held your breath too long. I made coffee, sat on the couch, and let myself feel everything. The betrayal. The anger. The grief. But beneath all that there was something else too. Relief? Oh. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I had stopped lying to myself. And because I had told the truth when it mattered most, not just to Dylan, but to myself. I wasn't the woman who overlooked red flags anymore. I wasn't the wife waiting by the door. I was someone else now, and I had no idea where this new path would lead. But I knew it would be mine. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of quiet that feels lonely. It was the kind that feels earned, the kind that comes after a storm has passed. I began filing for divorce. It wasn't easy. The paperwork, the questions, the memories. But each form I signed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Each step forward, however small, was a step away from everything I used to tolerate. I didn't tell many people what had happened, just the ones who needed to know. The truth didn't need to be shouted from rooftops. It had already done what it came to do. It had freed us. Dylan spent the next few weeks living with our parents while sorting through the mess. He was heartbroken, of course, but he was also grateful. He told me once, late one evening over coffee, "I don't know how I'll ever trust again, but I know I can trust you." That meant more to me than anything Mark had said in years. There were moments I missed: the routine Saturday morning breakfasts, watching TV side by side, the comfort of a warm body beside me in bed. But when I really thought about it, most of that had been just that routine, not love, not truth, just the habit of being close. And I wanted more than that now. I wanted real closeness, real honesty, even if it meant being alone for a while. Some nights I sat by the window with a glass of wine, letting the silence wrap around me, and for the first time it felt like peace, not punishment. I started writing again, just little things, journaling, thoughts, feelings, but it helped me put everything in perspective, helped me see not just what I had lost, but what I had gained. Because the truth is, sometimes we don't know how strong we are until we're forced to stand alone. And sometimes, the greatest love we show is not the love we give to others, but the love we give to ourselves when we finally walk away from what hurts us. So, if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had your world fall apart just to find your feet again, know this: you're not alone. You're not broken. And you don't need to go back to the fire just because it used to feel like home. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to like, share, or leave a comment. Your voice matters, your story matters. And who knows? Maybe